Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future is Bilingual podcast. My name is Heather. Thanks for joining me. I'm very excited to bring you this interview with Natalia Simons, the author of two bilingual children's books, The Spanglish Girl and The Mexiglish Girl. We talk about why she wrote these books and how she was able to publish them on her own. And then we also talk about her own upbringing as a bilingual child and compare that with my experience of raising bilingual children and some of the tougher things and what she thinks her parents did well and why it was successful. We talk about where she thinks her work is going to go in the future and her favorite Spanish expression. So enjoy the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future is Bilingual podcast. Today, my guest is Natalia. Hi, Natalia.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So nice to have you, and just really excited to learn more about you because I don't know you personally yet. So please tell me and tell my audience more about you.
Yeah, so I'm a bilingual children's author. I have published my first book was published in January, which was called The Spanglish Girl. Mm-hmm. And I've recently written my second book, which is called The Mexiglish Girl, which is actually out on the 2nd of September. So they're both in Spanish, both bilingual books. And the main...
January of this year and September of this year?
Yeah, January of this year.
You published books in 1 year? That's amazing.
Yeah, and while having a full-time job, so it has been a bit mental. But we've been in a pandemic. We've been on so many lockdowns in the UK, so I've had time to do that. I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have had enough time to publish 2 books in a year.
Yeah, that is incredible. Wow. I didn't realize that the first one only came out in January. I was really thinking it was from the previous year. Wow. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
What's your full-time job?
So I've recently moved over to doing this full-time. So I've opened up a publishing company and it's called Bilingo Books. I've always loved writing. I've always been fascinated with different cultures. Obviously, growing up bilingual, it's always kind of fascinated me, the fact that I could speak a second language, and I've always wanted to do it professionally, but I never really knew how I could incorporate the two. Mm-hmm. So during the lockdown, during the pandemic, I came up with the idea of continuing to write my book. So that's what I did. I thought, I've got enough time to work on this book, so I have to do it now. Otherwise, I will never finish it.
Right.
So I published the book, The Spanglish Girl. Published it in January, but obviously I'd been working on it months beforehand. Mm-hmm. Hadn't found an illustrator yet, so that's why I kind of had a bit of a break, but because I didn't know who to have as an illustrator. Then luckily my friend said that her sister is an illustrator, which came in really handy because it's really difficult to trust illustrators or for them to really understand your vision. So I got in contact with her. She understood my vision, I think, because she's bilingual too. She speaks English and Italian, so she completely got it. I sent her photos of the type of illustrations I wanted. She did an incredible job, and she's also illustrating my second book, which is more about Mexican cultures. It's based in Mexico. The first one was based in Spain, so this one's in Mexico, and they all have a very similar theme where the main character is bilingual. She struggles to speak Spanish at the start. She doesn't have much confidence. Some of her friends make fun of her, and then over the day she comes to gain confidence, and her grandmother tells her, you're very lucky to be able to speak 2 languages, to have dual heritages. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell the other kids that you're lucky enough to speak 2 languages and then realize? So it's kind of the similar theme for both books, but obviously the difference between both of the books are the different cultural references and the traditions and the illustrations. So I just decided, why don't I do this? And I've really loved, and it's opened up a completely new world. I want to write more bilingual books. My next one, I'm thinking about writing it in French.
Oh yeah. So what is your heritage? Just because we mentioned Spain and Mexico.
Yeah. My heritage is half English, half Spanish. So I grew up in the UK. My father's English and my mother's Spanish. And I'd always visit Spain in the summer holidays. So
Mhm.
I think by visiting Spain every summer, having a Spanish mother, it really made me realize how lucky I am to have another culture, to be able to speak a second language. And I absolutely loved it. So it never felt like a chore to me. I absolutely loved speaking a second language.
Hmm. That's so great. And I really love the idea for your book. Do you have a specific age group that you're targeting with that message? You know, the struggle, maybe not fitting in. What is the
Yeah.
age?
It's 4 to 8,
Mhm.
but I do know there have been parents who've bought the book for like their 10-year-olds or who for children who are a little bit older, but predominantly it's
Mhm.
4 to 8. But I mean, if they're 9 or 10 or 11, I'm sure they'll
Oh, for
be able
sure.
to read
For
the
sure.
book. It's quite it's quite a universal book. So I know I have published them both to be about Spain and about Mexico, but it could be for any country in Latin America because it's the same theme as being proud of your heritage and finding the confidence to realize, yes, I am lucky. I need
Mhm.
to make this an advantage and make the most of it, really.
Yeah, yeah, this is the situation, and see the bright side, not the other
Exactly.
side. And how did you pick Mexico to be for the second book?
Because I decided I wanted to write a book which was based in Latin America, and I think I know a bit more about Mexico. I've been to Mexico. I love the culture, the food. I know quite a few Mexican people, so I decided I could do the second one. Would be I would feel more comfortable writing about Mexico only because I know a bit more about it. But in the future, I want to target so many different Latin American countries, but I need to really research it first, speak to the locals,
Mhm.
find out a bit more before I put a pen and paper and decide to write about it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of diversity in Latin America, but that's great. And
Yeah,
I think Mexico it's a great place to start because I know just culturally, like a lot of the films come from there, and just
yeah,
a lot of what people that we consume as Americans that comes from Spanish speaking Latin America
yeah,
is from Mexico. So I think that's great.
definitely.
And what other languages do you speak?
So I speak a little bit of Italian. Well, I studied Spanish and Italian at university.
Hmm.
So when I did do an exchange to Italy, I did become fluent. But this was about 8 years ago now, and I don't really practice the language enough now. I mean, I'm sure I understand everything, but I would love to practice my Italian. And with travel, I haven't been able to travel for 2 years, and I
Yeah.
don't know many Italian people near me to practice. So I do speak. I would say I'm probably intermediate Italian now, but which is a
Mhm.
shame. Really. I would love to keep the language up because it's another country I absolutely love, and it's a beautiful language.
It is, yeah. Well, I'm curious then. You mentioned how you're thinking of writing the next book with French. Why not
Yeah.
Italian?
That's still on my list, but I know there's a bit more people that speak French. You got the French speakers in France and in Canada, so I thought it'd be
Yeah.
good to market it
Yeah, the
to.
francophone world is vast,
Yeah.
just like the hispanohablante, el mundo hispanohablante.
No, my friend, I don't speak French. He translated it for me, so I thought it would be very handy. I've got a friend who's a translator who translated the book, so it made more sense than the next one. Eventually, it will be Italy. Honestly, I have so many ideas. I would love to write it in every
Mhm.
single language, include every country, but it's a lot of time. As you said,
Oh,
publishing 2 books in 1 year has been absolutely hectic, but it's been really
yeah.
fun.
No, I can't even imagine. And I know a lot of people that I follow on Instagram are wanting to publish a book or just have published a book, a lot of creative ideas in the language learning or bilingual parenting community. So if you could speak more to that experience, I think that could be very helpful for people who maybe want to take that step and launch a book or have a great idea but have no idea how to even get it off the ground.
Yeah, I know. I was in the same shoes. I did originally. I sent my manuscripts to traditional publishing houses, but I don't really think they understood the vision. I think maybe because it was a lot to do with bilingualism, maybe they didn't understand it too much. But so I kind of gave up. This was a few years ago. So then I came back to it during the pandemic, made some changes, and then thought, you know what, I'm just going to publish it on Amazon because you can become a self-published author through Amazon, which is called Amazon KDP. And there have been so many people who have published through this platform, and it's made it possible for anyone to be an author. If you have an idea, then why not publish it yourself? And the good thing with becoming a self-published author is you have all of the control. There's no one telling you need to make the changes. There's no one saying, okay, we'll publish it in 2 years. You can publish it then and there. It's quite a simple process, but it is a lot of work. Like anything.
Yeah, I think people think the same with podcasts, with YouTube channels. You watch a 5-minute video thinking, oh, that looks like fun. Maybe I'll make a YouTube channel. But you have no idea all the hours of editing, hours of planning and setting up a scene. And I think there's so much behind these beautiful, we can call it works of art that people create, these creative things, outlets that people do. And the same, of course, is true for books. You have a 20-page book or however long a book is, and it's months and years of thinking. And
I had the idea nearly 2 or 3 years ago. I think I had the idea, but it's not until the pandemic that I went back to it and said, look, I'm going to become a self-published author. I'm going to do it all myself. I'm going to make some changes. I found an illustrator, an editor, and it was all thanks to the pandemic. As tragic as the pandemic's been, it's given me the time. And that's the key. It's just finding time to publish a book.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of us realized have a different sense of time when we had to slow down and couldn't leave our houses and couldn't distract ourselves with other things. It's definitely flipped our worldview upside down a bit. And the fact that everybody, it wasn't just, the UK in a lockdown, it was the whole world.
I know, and it kept me sane, because otherwise I think I'd be thinking too much. I'd be watching the news, all this negative news. I just locked myself away, put my head down, and just concentrate on this project. Yeah, I'm very busy.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. I think I know a lot of people started podcasts during that time, or blogs, or, just things like people needed to be creative. Like, I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs. I got to do something.
Exactly.
So tell us more about growing up bilingual, because a lot of my audience is parents raising bilingual and multilingual children, or people that are interested in learning languages. So just tell us, I know you mentioned that you enjoyed it, which is great as a kid, because we hear a lot of struggles that parents say their kids don't want to speak. So kind of just tell us, how did your parents make it fun? How did they make it important? Why was it successful, I guess?
So it was always my mum who spoke to me in Spanish, because my dad was English. So I think naturally my mum just decided to speak to me in Spanish. She's Spanish. So at home, I would always speak to my dad in English and then speak to my mum in Spanish. So it was more the one parent, one language. I think the reason why I really loved the language and I spoke to my mum in Spanish was because we visited every summer. So every summer we would spend 6 weeks in Spain, and I had my grandparents there, a really big family, friends, cousins. I just had a great time there. So I think by going to Spain once a year, it made me realize, okay, I really need to carry on speaking Spanish throughout the year if I want to go back to Spain and be able to have a great time and communicate with my friends. But don't get me wrong, there were times when I was growing up, if I came home from school, I wouldn't want to speak in Spanish. I'd be tired, or I would quickly want to explain something that happened at school, and I would explain it in English rather than Spanish. So, it wasn't all a very easy journey, but on the whole, I did love the language. I felt proud having two cultures. I think it also depends on the age range. When you're a teenager, you're quite hormonal, and one day, why do I even have to speak Spanish? And the next day you think, Oh yeah, I've got family there.
Mm.
Yeah, I
That's
think
great
it's
though. Hmm.
into the mood as well. If you say, if, you're a child and you're hungry and you're going to say that you're hungry in English, you're not necessarily going to start having a meltdown in Spanish because it's just
Mm.
naturally. So I think it's more the exposure of knowing that I would go into Spain every summer. But now I'm guessing it's quite difficult with travel. Not a lot of people being able to visit their family, so it's probably been a little bit more difficult for the children to think, okay, maybe I should speak the second language. And
Yeah.
maybe they're thinking they don't need to anymore because they're not visiting because of the pandemic.
Hmm.
So I think we're quite lucky in that sense.
Yeah, and it's not too far for you. I know for us, our heritage
Exactly.
language is Polish from my husband, and Poland is very far from the US, so it's not like we can just drive there in a couple hours or fly there quickly.
Yeah.
So it's tough, and people have different financial circumstances that they can't afford to go every
Yeah.
year. But I think it is a wonderful motivator. I've heard many, many, many people and people who grew up, parents and also children who grew up bilingual say that that was the biggest motivation was actually
Def-
being in the country.
Definitely agree. I mean, as you said, we're going to say, being surrounded by native speakers, you want to be able to communicate with them. Otherwise, you feel silly not being
Mhm.
able to speak to your family or your friends.
And did your family in Spain ever say, like, you have an accent, you sound British when you're speaking Spanish?
You know what? My family never once ever said I had an accent when I spoke in Spanish. They always used to encourage me and would say I would speak really well. But I never, now that I think, when they said that, maybe they just think they just meant I spoke really well, but I had a little bit of an accent. But no, my family never said that. It was only my friends who were younger who would say, oh, you've got a bit of an accent, or maybe they would mimic a word if it didn't sound too Spanish. So it was more of the kids who would
Hmm.
say, oh, you sound really English, or would just laugh if I couldn't say a word or if I was to forget a word, but which is really good. My
Yeah.
family, that they never mimicked me. They made me feel really comfortable, which is I'm so grateful that they actually never turned around and said, you sound so English. Because I
Yeah.
think I've got a mixture of an accent when I speak in Spanish anyway, but they never
Mm.
pointed it out.
But that's such an important thing for parents and family just to realize, because if you start putting a kid down for the way that they speak, or you correct their grammar too much, or I just think there's so many ways that we can accidentally discourage use of the language. Um,
Definitely.
and maybe not your parents, but sometimes people have told me that the family abroad, not meaning to, they just notice it and they'll say things and make comments, and people just aren't always aware that the comments could be taken very, critically by that person, and then you
It's,
shut down and you don't want to speak the language. So I think that's really great that your family never did that.
No, but some of my friends would, kids being kids, but I
Kids are kids.
hate.
Yeah.
I hate it. As you said, I'm so glad my family never did that because I probably wouldn't have wanted to carry on speaking. I would have been silent and said, "Well, I'm not going to speak it if you're going to make fun of me." It's a really horrible thing for someone to laugh at your accent
Hmm.
if you're not, if you don't sound Spanish enough, because it makes you think, well, do I sound silly or is that what I sound like? So yeah, it's really not a good idea for people, especially for children, to for adults to mimic the way children speak, even if they don't sound native enough. I don't think, never do that, otherwise
Hmm.
they will take it to heart.
Yeah, that's such an important point. And just there's so many different accents, there's different
No.
Spanish accents all around the world. There's different, like American English, British English. We don't speak the same way, but it's still English. It's still good.
Oh no, as long as you can understand, I don't see well there's any problem. As you said, the northern and the southern Spanish accent is completely different. So it just doesn't mean we're an alien. It just means we have an accent because that is where from. I mean, an accent defines where you come from. I think we should
Hmm.
ever be ashamed of that. But it is annoying if you have kids mimicking your accent, which I talk about in my first book, The Spanglish Girl.
Hmm.
So it talks a little bit about the children who made fun of my accent and then my grandmother encouraging me, saying, look, you speak really good Spanish and English. I bet the kids can't even speak English. So why don't you, next time they make fun of you, why don't you turn around and just say, I bet you can't speak English as well as I can speak Spanish. So, which was really good. I had my family always encouraging me in those sorts of situations.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's like the meme on the internet that says, don't make fun of someone's accent in English. It means they speak another language.
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that one. It's, yeah, brilliant.
So tell us, what is your relationship with Spanglish? Is it a language you speak often? Or did your mom discourage you from mixing?
Yeah, we didn't really speak. I only put the title as the Spanglish Girl for the first book. It's to show that the main character is Spanish English, but there isn't any of the mixing of the language. But I think when I was younger, I did sometimes mix the words, but it didn't happen very often. And then when you get to know the language a bit more, you stop mixing the two. But my mum would never speak to me in Spanglish. She's a Spanish teacher as well, so I think she would want me to speak it correctly with the right grammar. So yeah, but I think sometimes I think in English she may have mixed a word together when I was younger. And I remember her saying, I think naturally sometimes we mix the words, especially if we're being tired or our brain isn't working.
Yeah, no, it's a very common thing, especially if both people or all the people speaking are bilingual and you can just throw a word in. It's very, very common.
Take them up.
Yeah. And what about your father? Does he speak Spanish?
Yeah, he speaks a little bit. I wouldn't say fluent, but yeah, he does. I think he understands more than he speaks. But again, it's the practicing. You need to go over there and spend time with other people. But it made sense for me to only speak to my dad in English, and naturally it would feel strange speaking to my dad in Spanish anyway.
But at least he doesnn't feel left out if you and your mom are talking.
He understands. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, that's good, because that's another tricky thing when families don't share one parent speaks, let's say like Chinese, and the other parent doesn't. I don't know. It would be tough for me as the parent that doesn't understand the other language. That's why I learned my husband's language.
You learned Polish because of your husband?
Yes, yeah, he's Polish, and I learned Polish because his family was always speaking in Polish, and I was just feeling like left out. Like, I want to know what's happening. I don't want to depend on him to translate everything.
Wow, and how's it going?
Oh, fine. Yeah, we speak Polish at home, so that's the language we're raising our kids in. So I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but it's probably like maybe you're Italian, like intermediate.
Yeah,
high.
Wow, that's really cool.
Did you ever feel like you were losing the Spanish at all over the years? Or did it always seem very...
Yeah, I'm probably losing it most now because with my partner at home, he's English. And especially when we've been in a lockdown, I've just been me and him in the house. And where I was working before, it was all in English. So it's probably, ironically, I know I'm writing books about being bilingual, but I'm probably losing it at the moment. But I am really trying my hardest to practice it. So I've got a lot of friends who I speak to on WhatsApp in Spanish. When I phone my mum or when I see my mum, we always speak in Spanish, but obviously I don't see her as much now when we don't live together. And I watch all my Netflix in Spanish, so I do try. And I've been to Spain for over 2 years because of the pandemic. So probably when I go there next, I will realise, oh damn, I think I'm probably forgetting some of the word. It won't be till I go to Spain and I realise, okay, well, I've really noticed I haven't been in Spain for a few years. So I am really trying, but the best way is being surrounded by Spanish speakers. And I live in the UK, so there aren't that many that I know that I can speak to every day.
And I didn't ask, but what part of Spain is your family from?
Yeah, they're from the north of Spain. They live in a city called Zaragoza, but they're from a tiny village near Teruel. Yeah, a tiny village. Usually, there's about 40 people that live there all the year round.
Oh, wow.
So pretty. Yeah, so there's
my goodness.
I know 40, but people go, there's usually around 200 to 300 people go there in the summer, which still isn't much, but it's amazing because everyone knows each other.
Of course. Wow. I can't even imagine a village that tiny.
Yeah, one day I'm going to write a book about the village. It'll be more for an adult's book. So
Yes, yeah, you definitely should. That is fascinating.
it is pretty fascinating place.
And this is personal, so you don't have to answer this. But
Mhm.
if you ever have kids, are you planning, of course, to raise them bilingually?
Oh, definitely. I think that's the reason again why I wrote the books in both, English and Spanish, just to remind myself when I have children, they've got the resources, and to remind myself, yeah, you grew up bilingual, so it's really important that they speak both languages. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
But I am a little bit worried because my partner's English. We live in the UK. Like I had when, like, there's some of the problems I had when I was younger. If I just wanted to quickly explain something to my mum, I would explain it in English, and I've got a feeling that might happen with
Mhm.
my kids. If they're doing something and it will come naturally for me to say it in English, but I've really, when I do have children, I really want to discipline myself and speak to them in Spanish. That's why I'm doing this now, and I'm reading so much about it so that I have all the materials and I'm prepared when it comes to having children and speaking to them in Spanish. It's going to
Mhm.
be hard, but I think I'm in a good community at the moment to get tips from people, and I have to make sure that my mum only speaks to them in Spanish, and I
Mhm.
would love to take them to Spain every year and just spend the whole summer, because I think that would be the only way they will realise that it's important to speak
Yeah,
Spanish.
that's a great plan. And I think you're
Yeah,
touching on something that's really important, which I think all of us as bilingual parents struggle with, is that, if you have a language, even if it's not your native, like my husband's been here for 20 plus years, so his English is more dominant now. He left Poland at 14. And
oh
just
wow.
sometimes like he'll want to say, like it'll be more just easier to say it in English, even though Polish is his native language. And of course, for me, English is way easier. But it's a struggle. Like I find all of us, no matter what your fluency, if you're native, non-native, it's just sometimes certain domains are more dominant in a certain language. And then you're in the country, like you're in the UK, I'm in America. It's just English is just dominant. And I think it is a struggle if one of the partners is from that dominant country. And if you're, splitting only half the time, like one parent, one language,
Yeah,
it's kind of not a risk, but it's just a fact that there's going to be a lot of English exposure. So you kind of have to balance that out. But I think, every family has a different situation and a different, percentage of language use and things and comfort levels, and everybody, we're just doing what's best for our families. But yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot more. I didn't realize till I was kind of deep into parenting, like how much of a struggle this would be. Like you have like the idea, like, of course I'm going to raise my kids bilingually. I always thought I would raise my kids in French and, depending on who I married. But it just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's just so many more struggles that come up when you're actually doing it. And then that's
stressed as well. So it's like
kids.
trying to discipline yourself. It's no
Yeah.
one's perfect. We're only human.
Exactly. And then you've got the kids and their opinions and all that added in, which makes it even harder.
As I think with all the friends are speaking English, then it's hard for them to realize, well, why do I need to speak Polish, or why do I need to speak
Exactly.
Spanish? So
hmm
another reason why sometimes I would come home and think, well, no one else speaks Spanish. When you have one of those days of misbehaving, when you
hmm
my mum's buttons, and I'd say, well, what? None of my friends speak English, so what? None of my friends speak Spanish, so why do I have to speak English,
Yeah.
Spanish? I'm even confusing the two languages.
I did have a question about the book. Is the book in both Spanish and English, or is it written in one? And then there's like another copy that's in, like a copy in English and a copy in Spanish?
Oh no, they're both in English and Spanish. So, for
Okay.
example, there's one page, one paragraph is in English, and below the English paragraph is in Spanish. So it's in both languages.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's an actual bilingual book. It's hard to
Yeah.
find. Like there's not that
No,
many that have both languages on the page. So I think that's really such an important contribution. And I hope you
well,
write many more.
yeah, I will. This isn't the last. There's going to be many more. This one of the reasons why I decided to write bilingual books, because there weren't that many out there, and especially in the UK, and there aren't many out there that talk about not just having the two languages, but of the culture and being proud of your culture and your heritage. So I wanted to merge all the factors into one.
Yeah, no, I think that's really beautiful. And I can't wait. I need to get a copy of your book so I can eat.
Thank you.
Even though we don't speak Spanish in our house, I think the message
It
translates
is
to whatever language. It doesn't have to be English,
universal.
Spanish. It can be, you could
Exactly.
speak French and German and still read the book if you speak English or Spanish and get the message. So
Yes, it's a universal message. So it doesn't matter if the book is based in Spain or Mexico. Anyone who's got two cultures, comes from two heritages, will be able to feel identified with the main character.
that's so great. And where can we buy the book if we're interested?
Yeah, sure. You can buy it from Amazon. The Spanglish Girl is on Amazon, and the Mexiglish Girl will be available also on Amazon on the 2nd of September. So a few weeks now.
Wonderful. That is coming up soon. And I will be sure, I will put links so that people can easily click from the show notes.
It'd be really nice of you.
And where else can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram under Bilingo Books, and you can also find me on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter, which is Natalia Simons. I don't really use Twitter. It's mainly Instagram or Facebook.
But you're on there just in case.
I'm on there, yeah, for sure.
Great. And I will add links, like I said, to all of that to make it very easy for our listeners.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you teach us like a word or a phrase in Spanish?
Yeah. So my favorite phrase is sobre mesa, which literally translates as upon the table. Well, that probably won't make sense to anyone if you it's on the table, literally. What it means is it's relaxing at the table after a heavy meal. So when I'm in Spain, me and my family, after we've had a meal, we usually spend an hour or two at the table just talking, letting our dinner go down. So it's a big thing that you do in Spain. It's socializing. You have a coffee after dinner and you just talk about everything. And I just think it's beautiful that there isn't really a word for that in English. And I discovered it even though every year I do this with my family, I didn't realize there was this word that existed. So I came across it a few years ago. Wow, we really need one in English too.
Yeah, I don't know what we'd call it. The after meal.
Yeah, I think it's quite a common thing in Spain just to relax after a meal and talk to your family about everything. And I just think it's a really beautiful thing that there's even a word for it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the concept. And I love my family has a habit of doing that more than I think a typical American family. But it's just healthy to just sit and relax and not rush. I feel like we're always being rushed up from the table. The minute you finish, like the waiter will bring you the bill and try and kick you out.
No, sometimes you don't even want to move after a heavy meal and you just want to have a laugh with your family or friends. And this sobremesa usually lasts around an hour or an hour and a half. So it's a good time to catch up.
And what time does dinner usually start? Because I know Spaniards like to eat very late.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, they eat a lot in one day. So the main lunch is 2 in the afternoon, which is usually a 3-course meal. But then dinner is in the summer. It's usually around 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Wow, yeah, that's so late for us. But the sun is setting so differently. Like I'm in the eastern United States, and we get the sunset. Like we're on the beginning of the time zone. So for us, the sun is already going down at 8 o'clock.
I know, and then you're going to bed. In the UK, I usually eat about 6 or 7, and then when I go to Spain, everyone laughs at, "Oh, you've had your dinner already. Why are you so early?" And I think, how can you eat so late? I want to go to bed at 11, but I think it's usually the summer holidays if they're staying up late. But I do struggle when I go there to have a meal at 10 o'clock, but I soon adapt to it. But I quite like it earlier, to be honest.
But it's also such a cultural thing because Poland it's on the same time zone as Spain, but the sun gets up and goes down earlier in Poland, and they talk about if you eat too late, you're going to have nightmares. Like there's like this cultural idea of not eating late.
Yeah.
So for them, like 10 o'clock would be crazy because it's dark and,
It's like, hey, you want to go to bed? Yeah. I can't sleep straight away if I've had a heavy meal at 10 o'clock anyway.
Oh no, definitely not. But yeah, it's just so interesting how the sun has affected the cultures and when they eat and how they look at that. Well, I love that. Thank you for teaching us about sobremesa. That's so great.
Yeah, no problem.
And
I'm
I
glad
will I'll put all the links so people can find us. And it was just such a pleasure to talk with you. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity.
It's amazing what technology you can communicate with people from across the pond or anywhere in the world. Yeah, it's great. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, and thank you. And we'll hope everybody will check out your books. And I can't wait to see what other books you're going to come out with, especially the French one, because we're moving to Quebec and our kids will be learning French.
Okay. Well, that will come in handy then. Yeah, I will
Very
definitely
handy.
about it. It'll probably take a few months though to publish.
No rush. No rush. My kids are still little. They're 2.5 and 4. So I'm well within the age range. Yep. All right. Well, take care. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you guys so much for listening to my interview with Natalia. We hope that you enjoyed it and learned something and that you will go and check out her books, The Spanglish Girl and The Mexiglish Girl. I've added all the links into the show notes so you can easily find her Instagram, Bilingo Books, or you can click and buy her book from Amazon or elsewhere. She has lots of links listed in her Instagram Linktree. So I will put the link to that so that you can go and see it for yourself. And I just want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll be back with another episode soon. Take care.